Now that the dust has settled on Ghost of Yotei and the sales haven't reached the numbers that PlayStation has expected, the apologists are out in full force like good little soldiers. And naturally, like always, they want to blame Gamergate for the pitfalls of games like Ghost of Yotei and Last of Us Part 2 even to this day, never coming to the realization that the issue actually lies with them and them alone. The article that inspired this video is from Slate.com, which is titled Ghost of Gamergate, a new video game sparked fury and accusations of wokeness in entertainment. But we've played this game before and it's boring. We have played this game before. It was called Ghost of Tsushima and it was much better than whatever it is they're doing now. At least that part's true. But I also noticed that the person who wrote this article is named Laura Kate Dale. I could have sworn I've seen that name before. It tickled that part of my brain, so naturally I had to go looking, and upon finding their Twitter, which is this one right here on screen, don't harass anyone by the way, let's just observe like responsible adults and not stoop down to their level. But I then scrolled down and saw this image here of this Laura person, and it all started to make sense. You see, Laura here is a trans woman who worked on Dragon Age Veilgard as to some capacity, I guess, which Erika Ishii, the main character voice and face in Ghost of Yotei, also did the main character in that game as well. So yeah, this is all starting to make a lot more sense now. So a former colleague who's in the same camp as Erika Ishii is now defending her and Yotei for not doing as well after they both worked on Veilgard together. Now that the lines are all lining up and it's all starting to make sense where this hit piece is coming from, so now that we all know this, everything being said here on out as I go further has that extra baggage that'll make everything even funnier and stupid as we go along. Right out of the gates, this Laura decides to lead with this, which reads, back in the summer of 2020, during the first year of COVID lockdowns, two first-party PlayStation games were released back-to-back, just a month apart, Ghost of Tsushima and The Last of Us Part 2. Upon release, Ghost of Tsushima was pretty beloved by a specific right-wing culture war gamer crowd, who placed it on a pedestal specifically as a way to directly attack The Last of Us Part 2. Already the political angles are being set by this Laura here. Yes, Ghost of Tsushima was a right-wing game apparently, despite being made by people who evidently agreed with allowing a literal Antifa supporter as their main character in the sequel game. And claiming that Tsushima was used as some sort of gotcha against Last of Us Part 2 is quite rich, since Part 2 was largely universally hated for its story and characters by players everywhere regardless of ideology. The only people who liked the game's story and characters were the game industry, who unsurprisingly also awarded its Game of the Year over Tsushima because it starred a gay woman fostering a baby with the village bicycle from a guy who gets shot in the face in a movie theater. What a game. What a ride The Last of Us Part 2 was. It was really a watershed moment in all the worst ways imaginable. The most incredible part of how unaware these people are on purpose is that it clearly wasn't a right-wing thing that hated Part 2's story. After all, just go look at the TV show adaptation of the same game, and look at how general viewing audiences who haven't even played the games reacted to the plot of Part 2. You had places like Game Rant, as shown here, not really being surprised at all with how poorly Last of Us Season 2 went for HBO, considering how explosively popular Season 1 was, just like the game, or The Hollywood Reporter with their coping article titled, The Last of Us ratings declined during Season 2. But why? But why indeed? How could a beloved show about the relationship between a father and daughter turn sour when the father is ended quickly into the second game's plot and then the entire thing becomes a woman fever dream? But why indeed, The Hollywood Reporter? I guess we'll never know, except we do. It's because people were sick and still are of this sort of rhetoric and slop in their entertainment. Look, it would have been one thing if Part 2 did terribly with fans, but the show did amazing, but that didn't happen either. The fact the HBO show genuinely replicated almost to a T what happened with the second game when it came to its plot at the exact same point of when that plot turned south is actually frankly amazing. You can't say the right-wing crowd doomed The Last of Us Season 2 or even the show, because that would insinuate that everyone who watches is somehow also right-wing, which would be an incredible self-own. No, instead the show flopped and the game did not do as nearly as good as the first one because it eliminated the fan-favorite male protagonist and then forced the players into the shoes of characters they didn't want to play as instead. Oh gee, that sounds a lot like Yotei, doesn't it? Wow, who could have thought pulling a Last of Us Part 2 on your Ghost franchise wouldn't be a good financial decision? The crazy part is that Yotei wasn't even in production yet when Part 2 released, so Sucker Punch could see objectively the the trajectory of Last of Us 2 in real time, and see that the decision to gender swap the protagonist and push woke identity politics really wasn't the way to go. And yet, despite having all the evidence laid out in front of them, what did Sucker Punch do but the exact same thing as Naughty Dog, only to reach a similar but far less enthusiastic launch comparatively? There has to come a point where these types start to realize the patterns are not simply because they're somehow victims always. Everyone who isn't some far left person is also rejecting these things, and I don't know how else to say this, but the majority of the world is not far left nor far right on any given topic. Most normal people, the majority, like many watching this, are neither really fully liberal nor really fully conservative either. They just exist in the middle. They agree with either side maybe on certain things, but to claim that one camp is your home isn't really it. If the overwhelming amount of normal people are just not buying your stuff, you can't really blame them but only yourselves. But here's what Laura said about Last of Us 2 and why people apparently hated it. Here's what they said. But the game's sin on release for many on the political right was that it took a series whose lead was previously a man and continued its story with one lead who was a lesbian and another whose appearance was deemed too masculine for these players to be attracted to her. Frequently, allegations his character must be trans were used to suggest her appearance discredited her right to womanhood. The game also featured a prominent transgender character, which further drew the ire of right-leaning gamers. Come on, Laura, you know it's much more than that, and you know it. Yeah, people were angry that they weren't playing as Joel, but you can't blame them. When every single trailer for the game marketed itself as putting Joel in scenes that he wasn't even in the game to make it seem like he was in the game more than he was so people would buy the game in the first place. That was deceptive marketing and you know it. You could say, oh, it's defying expectations, but I'm going to call it what it is. It's lying to your consumer base. People love the first game, okay? Joel was a very compelling and complicated character. Then your sequel game shows more Ellie gameplay, which I don't think anyone at first had a problem with because Ellie was also playable in the first game too during the infamous winter segment, not to mention the DLC. But Naughty Dog hyped out that game to seem like it was going to be this revenge-filled journey where Joel and Ellie go together and take names and, defeat people and whatever else. Again, instead they literally lied and showed cutscenes where Joel is dead already in scenes he can't canonically be in the first place. Like when Jesse puts his hands on Ellie's mouth from behind, but then they try to say that it's Joel in the trailers when it clearly wasn't. You can't get mad at consumers for buying a game and then finding out quickly that they were actually lied to and then forced into a different game than what they were being sold. It would be like playing a Spider-Man game and they push it as a Peter Parker game, but then you play as a bunch of other characters that aren't really Spider-Man. And people then hate that because the game was marketed as a Spider-Man game. Oh wait, they did that, didn't they? It was called Spider-Man 2, and how did that go? Oh right, as seen here, the second game dropped nearly 50% in total sales compared to the first game. Wow, imagine that. It's almost as if we're sensing a pattern here, aren't we, Laura? People don't like getting lied to. It's like a clickbait video. But instead, you have to pay $60 to access the article is pretty much what Last of Us Part 2 was. And then they spend the entire game with a nonsensical plot that ends in more nonsense, using that as some sort of this is right-wingers' fault is just moronic. Nobody told Naughty Dog to lie to their fans, and nobody told Sucker Punch they wanted a female-led Ghost game. Everyone who bought the first game wanted a sequel to Jin's story. Literally everybody. But they pivoted. They tried to do something else and just told a worse story with a far less compelling hook. Like, for God's sakes. Not only did Sucker Punch copy Naughty Dog's homework with the female hero taking over for the male character, they even did another boring revenge is bad storyline again. And how many times are we going to see the same story in video games? The revenge is bad. No, it isn't. What's bad is letting the people who wronged you live their lives peacefully and create more victims like they did to you. It's like the now infamous IGN article that happened recently that came out coincidentally the same day as Yotei did, by the way, and it's titled, "I'm getting bored of every PlayStation game telling the same story." Yeah, me too, IGN. Me too. I mean, listen to how IGN opens their video about this. Please watch.
I'm a huge fan of PlayStation's first-party offerings. They've come to embody the sort of cinematic adventures I've always looked for when sitting down with a controller in my hand, feeling like genuine blockbuster events meant to be savoured. But where in the past this brand of glossy storytelling felt like new ground being trodden, I can't help but feel that recently it's become the well-worn road. It's not just that all of PlayStation's major releases adhere to the now trademarked third-person cinematic stylings. It's that the stable of developers has become seemingly obsessed with stories that explore the exact same themes, grief and revenge. And I'm starting to get a little tired of it. As a rule, these games are all impeccably well made, but I'm starting to miss that era when PlayStation's range felt wider and things were a little bit more fun.
Gee, I think it's kind of a problem, isn't it, Laura, that even IGN, the arbiters of defense against the audience wants and needs for years, is now starting to show the cracks in this ideological slogtail you guys just keep trying to push time and again. I mean, it doesn't even end there. Here's another clip from that same video where IGN blatantly states that Ghost of Yotei is just the same slob story told a million times already. Please, watch this too.
The realization that so many PlayStation games have explored the same grim story themes struck me when playing through Sucker Punch's new Ghost of Yotei. While I thoroughly enjoyed it and admire its consistently exciting approach to combat and genuine sense of discovery it creates for exploration, I couldn't help but feel I'd been told its story before. As Atsu, you're tasked with avenging the death of your parents on a blood-soaked journey across 17th century Japan, as you hunt down each of the Yotei 6. Not only is this tale unfortunately close to the plot of Assassin's Creed Shadows, which I also played to completion earlier this year, but it's the same combination of fiery revenge arc crossed with meditations on what it is to grieve that has become something of a hallmark for PlayStation Studios in recent years.
I'm sorry it came to this. Little wolf.
2019's The Last of Us Part 2 is an obvious trailblazer, with Ellie's dark descent into a rage-filled embodiment of revenge coming as a result of the death of her father figure Joel. That, of course, was the sequel to the 2013 original that explored how Joel struggled to cope with the death of his own daughter. At the time, The Last of Us was seen as fueling a wave of sad dad games, including 2018's God of War. But in hindsight, these were just the building blocks for PlayStation's preoccupation with grief.
Find your way home. You are free.
So yeah, as you can see, it's funny how the only people who aren't admitting that the slop has hit a fever pitch are the very same people who profit from being brought on board to write and protect games with similar ideologies, actors, and themes every single time. Nobody wants this stuff. Revenge is not bad, and I think we need more stories about people overcoming impossible odds again. We need games where the hero faces the world and comes out the other side changed by what they've experienced, but not in some slop revenge plot again for the millionth time. As I've said in other videos, a Tsushima sequel could have easily explored the darker side of Jin's ghost moniker becoming a far greater threat as it inspires the people of Japan to become emboldened or copycats of his clearly disgraceful rejection of the samurai code. You could have had a very wonderful and nuanced tale where by the end of the game, Jin may have been saving Japan, but at the cost of what made Japan's society so honorable and just in the first place. The message could have been that Jin saved the body, the land of Japan, at the cost of his people's soul. And that would tie into the actual future of Japan, as in the centuries following, Japan would become divided and eventually be pulled into things like World War II, where moments like Hiroshima would further change the country's world forever. You could actually have said something about revenge and that it changes you into something else, but do it in a unique way that leaks out of Jin like sweat, as if it's almost poisoning and corrupting the minds of other Japanese warriors and people to defend against the Mongol invasion. But no, instead you just did another story already told by a game that released a month before your previous game did with Tsushima already. They instead wasted a golden opportunity to tell a really nuanced story with a very compelling protagonist in Jin Sakai. And you did it to cater to people like Laura here, who should never be your target audience anyways, because these people don't support games, and we know it. Because if they did, there would not be a literal graveyard of titles littered already that these types have also not supported either, despite being always angry when they fail. I genuinely do think that Tsushima's sequel being fumbled like this is one of the biggest gaming disappointments in recent years for me. Like, imagine if instead of Halo 3 and Master Chief finishing the fight, they just made Halo 3 about a random female Spartan like 100 or 200 years in the future, after Master Chief finished the fight already off screen. That's Ghost of Yotei. Absolute asinine decision making on display here. It shows a complete lack of understanding of what the fans wanted and proves to me why this woke ideological nonsense needs to be uprooted and thrown into the incinerator for good. We're losing far too many great games and franchises to these hateful and lethargic ideologically aligned weirdos, and I'm honestly tired of it. Laura does continue with more as they keep missing the point. Here's what they said. Now, the very same right-wing voices who held Ghost of Tsushima up as one of the best games ever made when it helped their argument seem to think that Ghost of Yotei is a terrible video game with no redeeming qualities. YouTube creators decried how woke politics ruined the game, while others took to X to decry its progressive agenda. Yes, because they ruined their franchise by not only telling a story that had been told before, but did it in a way that completely halted the momentum of what it could have been Sony's next ultra super popular franchise. And the fact that Laura Laura here can't see that as crazy, but who are we kidding when this same person helped make Dragon Age Veilgard of all things? That also completely missed the point of that series too, but Laura continued by referencing what Grummz said via Twitter as it reads here. We ignored the woke writings and other rumors. Mark Kern, a former video game executive and prominent Gamergate activist who goes by Grummz online, wrote on X. We ignored the protagonist changed to a woman for no good reason. We ignored that they made her ugly, but then it turns out it was a woke-infested, assassination-loving, Antifa-supporting, lesbian-ending woke piece of slop after all. And I mean, where is the lie? Everything Grummz said there is true about Yotei. The lead actor is just like, they are pro-Antifa. We know this already. It does end with two lesbians raising a daughter. That's in the game. You can't refute that. And it does ruin the momentum of the series because Tsushima sold 2.3 million copies in 3 days as a totally new IP, yet the sequel game couldn't even break 1.6 million copies in a full week. And even if you show the evidence, the White Knights will reject it and just ignore what you say anyways, despite it being true. Even the websites are reporting that Yotei isn't a mega hit either. When are these people gonna realize that objective reality is more important than the false realities they always tend to live in? How can you even debate these people when they so routinely just conveniently forget the truth just because it goes against their ideals in that moment? Like, these people are genuinely insane, dude. And the fact that you'll see these types try to discredit Grummz with his other game Ember, like, look, at the end of the day, Grummz was instrumental in making World of Warcraft, StarCraft, and Diablo, arguably some of the most influential games the industry has ever seen. Games that have done better and continue to do better than most new games made today either way. Yet you guys routinely just discredit the guy and hate him, and just forget his contributions to video games because he's an old head like Vince Impala who does Battlefield now and just wants games to be fun instead of lectures. Like, who should I value more in their opinion here? Laura, who I guess helped Veilgard, which was terrible, or Grummz, who made $3 billion franchises? Like, be serious, dude. Look at how Laura here continually misses the entire point. Like, listen to this. This is what they said. Many of the core arguments boil down to, I don't believe a woman could murder a strong and combat-trained man, regardless of their justifications. I think it's pretty clear the difference that they're upset about this is that this time the main character is a woman played by a non-binary actor. Ah yes, nobody wants to play as a woman. Just forget Stellar Blade, Wu Chang, Tomb Raider, Final Fantasy VI, 13 and 13-2, Bayonetta, the Borderlands series, Marvel Rivals, Overwatch, Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and soon to be 9 and then some, plus the Village DLC if you count that too, Portal 2, A Plague Tale, Innocence and Requiem, Tales of Berseria, Kenna, Bridge of Spirits, Super Metroid and all of those games, Returnal, Horizon Zero Dawn, Hades 2, Beyond Good and Evil, Claire Obscure, what else do we got? Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night, Silent Hill 3, and many more off the top of my head that people don't like playing as a woman. Oh, right. But instead, all those games I listed are pretty great and more. I mean, they all star women, don't they? Ah, that kind of just goes against what Laura's saying here, isn't it? Well, uh-oh again, I guess. You see what I mean? These industry types do not live in objective reality. You could have had a female protagonist eventually, but people wanted the sequel to Jin first. And yeah, it is a deal breaker when the lady in your game supports Antifa, for crying out loud. And let's not forget all the fighting games where you also play as women too. Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, I could keep going, but I don't need to. You get the point. People like female characters. They just don't like insufferable activist weirdos who hate the audience is what they don't want, which is what Yotei is. But of course we'll never admit it because it goes against the agenda, of course, like always. Nier Automata, there's another game with female protagonists. It sold like 7 million copies already. Like, I could just keep going. But why bother people like Laura? Or they're just gonna put their fingers in their ears and then shriek autistically instead of listening to you. Like, Laura then brings up Veilgard. Here's what they said. This isn't the first time this kind of attitude has followed Erika Ishii's attachment to a game. Last year, they were one of the voice options for Rook, the lead character in Dragon Age The Veilgard. That game was targeted with similar hate aimed at Erika Ishii as well as anyone else non-cisgender involved in the game in any capacity. Now, everybody hated that game because it wasn't Dragon Age. Y'all ruined the lore, you ruined Solus, and you turned Thetis into a transgender birthday party bonanza instead of the dark fantasy world that it was always meant to be. Even like Maddie Plays and Skill Up hated the game too. Like, come on, dude. And look at this cope as Laura writes this about Veilgard, and good God, it's a big paragraph, okay, but here we go. Let me read it to you. I'm sorry, but it is kind of long. But here's what she said. That game allowed the player to optionally have their character be transgender and featured a party member who came out as non-binary during the course of the adventure. I know firsthand how ravenous people were with that game's release. I posted online that I worked on the game without any specifics and was very quickly targeted with abuse ranging from exaggerated transphobic caricatures to violent punishment fantasy emails to disturbing content being spammed in my live stream chats. In their minds, as a trans woman credited on the game, I obviously must have single-handedly forced BioWare to make the game woke against their will. It was quite a thing to watch right-wing gamers stream Veilgard, pick 3 dialogue choices about being trans in a row and then act with mock outrage that the game had forced them to now be transgender. How tone deaf can you be, Laura? How can you look at the utter disaster that was Veilgard that did so poorly that EA is now owned by literal Saudi Arabians because of idiots like yourself ruining these franchises because you couldn't help yourselves, even after the dust has already settled, and you guys lost BioWare millions of dollars, and a lot of your colleagues got fired and are still looking for work, like Patrick Weeks, who still begs on Blue Sky for work to this day. You can sit there and look at Veilgard's reception and go, you know what, it's not our fault. Instead, it's those dang pesty right-wingers instead. Like, you're lost, Laura. The car you're in is barreling down the highway. It's raining. The lights guiding your vehicle aren't working anymore. The engine is beeping. The wheels are starting to fall off. The brakes aren't responding. The steering wheel is starting to shake too. And even then, you're going to sit there as your seatbelt unclips itself as you zoom into your own doom in the middle of the night, and you still can't realize that all of this is your fault. That nobody destroyed your ideology more than you did. But look at this cope. Look at what Laura then says next. As with Ghost of Yotei, you can see how flimsy these arguments are if you look at them for more than a moment, and the thing is, I wish we could just ignore this vocal but small minority of bigoted creeps. But their hate campaigns are unfortunately having real impacts on the kinds of games we are seeing getting made. The only thing flimsy is your arguments. Like, who are we kidding? And yes, how dare the industry want to make games for people who actually buy and support them? Like, how evil of them to do this. I'll end this video with this huge paragraph that Laura writes as their last hurrah in this article, as it reads here. Video game executives are unfortunately listening to this vocal minority of right-wing voices and allowing them to make boardrooms shy away from progressive themes. Many of these ideas are barely progressive. It's hardly a dramatic move for a game to feature a female character who is older or doesn't fit specific beauty standards, but that's the point. If these movements can wrap anything big or small into these reactionary culture wars and make enough noise, they can make anything but a cis-straight, able-bodied male protagonist feel like an inherently political, creative choice. Having your game's hero be a woman who can fight, or casting a non-binary actor because they were the best fit for the role should not be considered any more political a choice than having a white man play a white male lead character. Oh my god, dude, you missed the point so hard you gotta be a stormtrooper. Like, there's no way. There's no point in further discussing this moronic article, but I think you all get the point. If at the end of Veilgard failing miserably and Ghost of Yotei missing its sales targets and seeing games like Battlefield 6 do well and all this other crap not working doesn't convince you that these people are never going to learn from their mistakes, what Laura should do instead is just attach this article to their resume when they go looking for a job, so anyone with a functioning brain can read what Laura said here and realize if they allow ideologies like this to infest their games in any way, that the only conclusion they will actualize is losing hundreds of millions of dollars and having to call the movers to get rid of all the desks and furniture in the building, when people like this inevitably ruin every single piece of media that they touch. Your games suck, your ideology is losing, and you prove that you can't learn from your own mistakes. You're in your apartment right now, the walls are on fire, the windows are melting, the doorknobs are singeing your hand, and somehow you're still gonna say that this is still right-wingers' faults or something. Like, Jesus, dude, not everyone is some hateful bigot. You just convinced yourself that anyone who doesn't think like you is a literal demon, and frankly, you are just getting what you deserve. I have complete and utter apathy wrapped in a blanket as stupid to coddle someone whose brain is unable to understand the opinions of the very players that you were tasked in the first place with servicing. But good riddance. I hope this ideology dies as many times as it can, and people realize how stupid these sorts of games make these companies look by association. Stop letting morons make your games, and I promise you'll thank me in the future, but thanks for watching, subscribe, and good lord, man, I'll see you guys next time. What an idiot, dude.